Hi, everybody. I'm Justine Diamond from the Enable Community Foundation, and we're here with our 2016 interns to have updates on how things have been going in the past 2 weeks. We also have Caitlin Dwelly here, who does content coordination, web work, and just about other amazing stuff with the foundation, and she's helping run this. I'm in the middle, you may notice, of a big thunderstorm, so if I lose power, hopefully she'll be able to keep this running, and if not, we'll have to restart it, and then there'll be a new link, and we'll send out the new link to everybody. So to get us started, we're going to start again out at Rice with Akil and Chris. So you guys are up.
Awesome. Okay, sorry, our computer's doing weird things. So last week we were still trying to figure out the testing rig circuit. We had a discussion with our PI a few days ago and decided that the sensor portion of the circuit is too complicated and is taking too long to figure out for where we want to be by now. We were supposed to already have data by now, and we are still trying to figure out how to get the thing to work. So for the meantime, we are scrapping the sensor portion of the testing rig and only keeping the motors. And so instead, we are trying to find an alternate way to measure force for our hands. So that's why, Tricia, we were asking about how you guys were doing it. Hopefully we'll get that up and running in the next day or two. And then, let's see, on top of that, we have been trying to print with SemiFlex. Got the palm of our hand to print, and then our printer broke, so we are currently ordering new parts for the printer. But other than that, what else?
That's basically it. So, like, the goal is that if we want, the data we want to collect is basically showing, as a result of like the angle of flexion, what's the force efficiency. So, basically, like, we can measure the force in, as in like the force that the patient has to exert on the hand, and we can do that by simply, instead of tensioning to a gauntlet, we can tension the strings to a spring scale, and so just based on the force measurement on the spring scale, we can figure out what force the patient has to exert in order to close the hand, and then so after that, then we can combine that with another kind of force measurement to figure out what's the force that the fingers are exerting on the object. And so with those two metrics, we can quantify the force efficiency of the hands that we're printing. And so we would be testing over the different hands that we printed. So we printed ones with different infill, we printed with a different material, and so we'd be able to get like quantitative data which shows the force efficiency amongst the designs that we made.
Right. And so the goal with that is kind of twofold. One is to see kind of like what the best print parameters are for the Ninja Flex hand or for the Owl Flex hand. But the other kind of more far-reaching goal, I guess, is as patients come in to us, they have different abilities to move their hands or to move their wrist with like what's left of their hand, and so what we could potentially do is kind of offer a gradient of hand tension to the effect of like getting their muscles stronger as they progress through different hands. So they can start out with a hand that's really easy to grip and can't grip very much, and then as they gain strength, give them hands that are a little bit harder to tension or to grip, but give you more power to do so. So that's what we've been up to for the last week. Comments, questions?
That sounds pretty cool. I think the idea of being to go from a hand that's very easy to use to a hand that modifies with you as you go along, that kind of continuum of care for someone so that their device is always appropriate for them is really interesting. And the testing that you are doing or need to do sounds to me very similar to some of the stuff that is going down at Marymount. So
yeah,
right.
I'm wondering if we should just pass that over and do that next as our next. Is that good? You just need to unmute. Good.
Yep, that's good. I wanted to make sure you're all done. Yeah, no, I'm really interested in what you guys have over there at Rice. That sounds like right up my alley, especially with just from a rehabilitation standpoint. Just again, what Justine said, making sure it's always an appropriate device. And that relates a lot to what we're trying to figure out with the tensioning. The tensioning will increase the grip force. It might be more difficult to move, but if I could increase the grip force. So we'll do some more collaboration, I'm sure, but that sounds really great, guys.
Okay, you're on. Before you start, I will say that, like I said, not only did I see Garrett at Autodesk, but he helped at a build event at the Tech Museum of Innovation in San Jose, and that's where I first met him. The 2 days before I went down to Autodesk, and just so that you did a great job helping people build those hands, and were really good. I was really impressed at when there were problems with some of the thermoforming and stuff. You were able to really just get that handled right away. So I was really impressed. So I wanted you to know, and the work you've been doing. I know you're about to share it, but it's amazing. So it's all you.
All right. So what I've been working on this week. I have finished up the parametrics, or like I'm very, very close to finishing up. I'm like working out some tiny bugs on the palm for the parametrics. So I've pretty much finished that. I started working on prototyping like different just add-ons to the original Phoenix. So like this is a gauntlet with the tensioning block as part of it. I just wanted to see how that would turn out. So it turned out okay. I put together a hand with it all set up, and it worked pretty well. So I was happy and kind of pleased with that. And then I've also started the Instructable for the Phoenix hand, and I'm completing that. And I've also made like kind of like a business card for all the pins, so that like they're labeled by numbers, and that way it's easier for the people who are printing these out to like just match the numbers with certain parts, because the Phoenix palm or the Phoenix hand has lots of different pins that look very similar, and it's easy to get confused. So I found that out at the San Jose Tech Museum, so this was my solution to that. So yeah. And
you know, Garrett, that's actually really awesome, because we find with assembly events like that, when people are putting hands together, that's the biggest mistake. We always say, you know, identify all your snap pins, identify all your pins, but you will always have someone who puts the thumb pin into they always go in the wrong places.
Exactly.
And people had said, well, you know, if you could number them or you could put them, that is fabulous. That is fabulous.
Yeah,
JP's going to be like jumping for joy when I show him this.
Yeah, so that'll be a good addition, I hope. Yeah, so that was pretty much what I was working on this week. Yeah, finished up the Phoenix hand, which is big milestone for me.
Yeah, that's huge.
That was it.
No, that's huge, and it's going to make a big difference, especially this bit. Forget having finished this what you've done with the pins and identifying them that way is just really exciting. It's going to make it a lot easier to put these together, and that's fantastic. What fabulous work.
Yeah, it's like a simple solution that can just do a lot, I hope. Yeah.
I think so. Okay. I think Tricia, because she said she was going to get the storm that I'm kind of getting, so she may have lost her connectivity. So we'll go over to Jessica, we'll see what's happening, and hopefully we'll get Tricia back. If not, we'll have a longer update from her next week.
Okay. All right, let me get my screen share set up. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so since people didn't get to see it live last week, this is what I did last week. I was testing out different infills and depths of both pieces, and then I also changed the actual formation of the forearm piece. And so now it's 2 points coming to the center and then wrapping around up here.
this is the part that wraps around the PVC. And then we tried it out in the lab once it was thermoformed. And so you have like one pin here or in one of these different slots, and then another pin in one of these, depending on the rotation orientation that you want. And it was pretty solid. It held very nicely. The actual elbow joint needs a little bit of work. I need to figure out something that's going to make it stay on there a lot better, because it'll stay on once it's thermoformed, but there's just a little bit of give in it, and so I want to put some kind of cap on maybe, or just something that'll make sure that it's not popping out of the joint actually. And so the actual forearm piece is double the depth than the actual elbow piece, and so I found that the elbow piece was too flimsy and the forearm piece was too hard to thermoform. I really liked how sturdy it was just too difficult to thermoform, and it took a long time, heating up a lot of water, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. So what I need to do is bring them both to the same actual depth, just a medium depth probably. I'm around 1.6 to 1 or 0.16 to 0.18, and then I keep the infill probably around 35%, because we found a lot of success with that infill. And then one thing that was difficult when I was thermoforming it is not having a jig. And since I've thermoformed a lot of unlimited arms before, and having the jig for the actual bicep has been so nice, and then having no jig for the actual forearm, we've had a lot of difficulty with it. And so I'm exploring options this week into the different jigs. Like I said, I could continue with how the unlimited arm does it and use like a rolling pin or some kind of dowel. The only thing with that is that you're not going to get the correct shape exactly, because you could use the shape that you want, the diameter, which would be the PVC up here. So the PVC diameter, which is at the top where my mouse is only 1.3, and then the actual diameter where your elbow is obviously a lot larger than that. And so the design is tapering in. So if you just use something that's cheap and convenient, like a jig or a dowel, you're not going to get the exact shape that you want, but you'll be able to get the actual diameter of the PVC that you want up here, which is a plus. And obviously everyone can get these things, and super cheap and super convenient for a lot of people. So this next option is it's a couple things I designed this week, just really, really simple designs with just a long, smooth jig essentially. So with this, you'd be using a bit of material. If you did 0 to 5% infill, it wouldn't be terrible, and you'd get exactly the shape that you want. I also have here these just little protrusions that would fit into the slots, so you could line up things exactly how you want them and make sure that your elbow is going to line up with your forearm cup, which I have here. And so it's just hollow on the inside. There'd be a bit of support in there. And then I put it into MakerBot to see how long it would take on a Rep 2 at 5% infill, and it was around 2 to 3 hours. I think it was like 2.5 hours, which is not terrible if you're going to get exactly the shape that you want. And then something I was thinking of while you guys were talking is that you don't even have to have these protrusions out here. So if you're going to be printing a lot of these different arms and attachments, all you need is this one shape, because if it's a different size, all you need is the exact shape of the diameter of the PVC right here, and then it's just going to be the same tapering. Like the degree is going to change the same because you just be scaling the device. And so you could really just print one large one of these, and you could use it for all the different devices that you want. So this is an option I'm really, really leaning towards. And then the third option would be to do sort of a skeleton jig, so just taking away all the material and leaving like a small, like essentially a dowel on the inside, and then just changing the degrees that you have right here. So it'll get quite a nice tapered shape, but I don't think it's going to end up being as nice. But the other part of this is that you're using less material. It's going to be a weird printing orientation, though. Definitely, I can see that. So this week I'm printing all of these things, testing out the jigs, and picking the best one that I want, and also making sure that elbow joint is secured in some way, whether it's putting a cap on there or using some sort of pin. And then next week, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the scaling system for the unlimited arm, but it's really, really nice and elegant, and all you need is 3 different measurements off the person's arm, and it's off the arm that's like the other arm that they would have, and it's an amazing system. I really love it, and it works really well for us almost every time. And so I'd be looking at doing something like that. I've never done something like that before. And then also, I've never done parametricizing before or worked with Fusion, but one of the problems I'm going to end up having as I progress is that these holes here are fitted for certain like threaded screws. And so as obviously you scale up and down, you're going to get sizes that are between two screw sizes, so you'd have to do some drilling out. So if there's a way that I could figure out how to keep those the same and just have them come down evenly, that'd be really, really nice.
Jessica, I got two things for you. First of all, with the Fusion 360, Garrett might be able to give you some guidance and help.
Yeah.
Apparently he's picked up with some of that. I thought with parametric sizing that as you change things, those screws could be so that they could stay the same. But my other thing was, have you looked at what's called a French rolling pin?
No.
So a French rolling pin, hang on, I've got one in my hand.
Let's see.
A French rolling pin is tapered.
Ooh.
So I don't know if something like this would work for you, at least as a temporary thing, but you see it's wider,
Yeah.
and it tapers at the end.
Yeah.
So
because the main dimension that I need is that very end of the outside dimension of 1 inch PVC, which is 1.315 inches. Because that's what you need it to be at the end in order to get a very secure hold on that PVC that's coming through. And then as it comes out, I can change whatever degrees I want it to be.
this is probably about, I don't know, just over an inch, the end of the end piece of this. But I don't know if that's something to look into as even a temporary solution, because it's just something to think about, because it's tapered at the end. So I thought, wait a minute, my rolling pin is tapered.
Yeah. And obviously, like, rolling pins and dowels are super easy and super cheap, and everybody has them. But I can configure it so that people could use those instead of having to print large, bulky jigs. That'd obviously be the best solution.
Did anybody have any questions for Jessica? Garrett, have you got anything with the Fusion 360 stuff?
Yeah, so I was wondering, like, if you have like any experience with Fusion or just parametrics in general.
No, I just use Solidworks.
Okay, okay. So I have no clue what Solidworks is about, so I'm not sure. Wait, are you planning to model it again on Fusion, or?
I wasn't planning to. I could try. I don't know how Fusion works, but SolidWorks is basically you draw something in 2D and then you extrude it out in 3D. Is it similar?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I mean, I guess.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'll see if I can do anything. If you could like send me the files, I might be able to model them in Fusion, because they're they look relatively simple. They're just like flat, right? They print it flat because it's thermoform. So yeah, I could probably just model it again and then apply a few scaling factors and then parametric size them.
So,
but yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure if I have like time in general, but yeah. And another thing is, did you want the files for the Phoenix hand?
Yeah.
Fusion? Okay.
Yeah, I have my email address right here. You can send them to me.
Okay, because I'm still working on working out like a little bit of bugs in the Palm. Do you really mind about those, or?
No, they don't have to be the new ones. I just need one hand. I'm just making one special hand. I need to edit the files, and all I can find out there are the STLs. I just need like editable files, because SolidWorks you can't do the STLs.
Sure, for sure. All right.
And so when you actually parametricize things in Fusion, so when someone's going to scale that, do they have to scale it in Fusion, or can they scale it like in the MakerBot or Simplify software, and it'll keep that same dimension?
No, so the thing in Fusion is that there's like so what Andreas is doing with the parametricized files of Fusion of the Phoenix hand is that he has a script on Fusion that generates a bunch of different sizes. So it's on Fusion, it will size it up like 100, 101, 102%. It'll just make a giant lookup table for a bunch of people, and then all those files will be taken into LimForge, which is like the new Handomatic, where and then people can size it up from there.
Okay.
And then print the file directly from Fusion. It's like exporting the file from Fusion to the MakerBot. You're not going to size it up on MakerBot because that's only linear scaling.
Oh, okay. So you can't change any other. It's like when you put it in LimForge, you already have the infill and shells and everything set. They're
already set up lookup table. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, and I see Tricia was able to rejoin us. So Tricia, we're going to go back to you.
I don't know if anyone saw, I just lost power again. I managed to keep internet, so I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly, and if I need to go in depth again later on, then I will be happy to do so, but I'm just going to go through whatever I've got now, because I don't know how long it's going to last.
Sounds good.
Okay, so can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I did some initial therapy testing before I left. Unfortunately, I've been out for quite a while, so I did this a while ago. But again, this is just kind of the guide of how to differentiate between color and intensity. The black is kind of difficult to see any results. In person, you can see results just fine, but on you'll see just shortly, the photographing is a bit more difficult. So I just started off with our smallest that we had wired, which was the Raptor Reloaded. It was our Robin themed hand. So you can see that this is kind of just the cylinder that was rolled beforehand, and I re-rolled the cylinder each time before I tested the photo. So you'll actually see a slight variation between each of the photos, and that's just to track the changes as accurately as possible. Sometimes they just need like a quick kind of roll out because as soon as you place the putty on this flat surface, it would start to kind of gently mold. So you just kind of had to re-roll it out a little bit, but each cylinder was re-rolled. And then you can see where the indent, and I'll show you in just a second where the therapy is placed. But you can actually start to see the finger grips here. And again, because it is a Raptor Reloaded, this was not a, I don't believe this was the, oh no, this was the adaptive grip, excuse me. This was an adaptive grip wiring, excuse me. So you can kind of see that gentle fading here where it's the strongest, and that's the index and middle finger, and then the ring and small finger are the most faint, which is consistent with what an adaptive grip would do. And then you can see it from the back side, and you can actually really start to see right in here where the hand is truly gripping. So there's quite a bit on top, but it's actually a lot of the fingers forcing it, the object into the hand itself instead of just kind of between the fingers and the palm like I originally thought. So, and I'll post this to our sandbox or send out an email. That way people can get an idea and look through these in more detail and make their own kind of observations, especially because I am losing power. So this is just as intensity. We started at the lowest and we're going up. So again, this is from behind. You can still see this adaptive grip. It's still managing to grip onto each of the surfaces regardless of intensity. But you can see there's definitely, as intensity increases, just between the extra soft and the extra soft, there is already a bit of a difference between how much the ring and pinky fingers can actually grip. And then as we go up, I believe this one was the soft. And so again, each putty has a very distinctive grip pattern. It's very consistent. There's a grip pattern in each of the putties, but you can still see what is doing the primary gripping function on the hands, which is really good because you do want to see most of that index and middle finger. Your ring finger is actually the weakest finger on your hand, and so getting that grip is not as important, especially with that pinching. You definitely want to see that with the index finger. So just some more photos. And a couple of times we had to redo some trials. We couldn't get it to sit right. But I basically placed the putty in the hand, closed the hand fully, and then allowed the hand to grip the putty for about 10 seconds. That way we made sure to get a full grip, something that wasn't being overdone, especially because the putty would start to kind of sag on the ends. So we made sure to do it quickly and efficiently, but also make sure we're getting deep enough imprint. And then again, it's kind of hard to see just because of the lighting. I was using a really nice camera and it still couldn't really pick up on a lot of the minor indentations. You can kind of see this a little bit better from the back. And then here's just kind of a zoomed in additional view. And it's really interesting with the extra firm putty. You could definitely see the index and middle fingers here, but then it was just the very tips of the ring and pinky fingers that were gripping onto the putty, versus up with the softest, it was kind of a more, you could get a more complete grip with the smaller fingers, but in the extra firm, you didn't get that full grip. But it was still enough of a grip where the hands were solidly holding the objects. There was no issue of an object falling out. So it was overall a successful trial, especially with our smallest hand. But I'll show you the Phoenix hand now. This is where it got interesting, just because you can see the difference. The Phoenix hands were also an adaptive grip. And I have a comparison slide at the end, so you just kind of look through the photos. But you can see very clear imprints in the Phoenix hand. This was a larger hand. So part of it was we didn't have hands that were all of the same size to test. Part of our printer actually decided to stop working. And so we were printing gauntlets, we were printing new pieces, finishing the wiring. And so it was kind of hard to test a Robin hand that was a 1.1 Raptor Reloaded against the Wonder Woman hand, which is the Phoenix 1.4. But I do believe our next hand was a 1.3. So when you look through these on your own, it'll be easier to flip back and forth and look. So it's hard to compare the 1.1 to the 1.4, but the 1.3 and the 1.4 hands are much easier to just kind of see differences, especially just because they're going to grip the same amount of putty relatively closer together than they would with the Robin hand. So all the hands did a really good job of gripping the putty. Eric and I were talking about adding more putty and testing that to see a real change in surface area. You can see there wasn't a vast change between them. We did place these on graph paper, so when we go back and do a deep analyzation of it, it'll be much easier to see a true change in surface area. It's pretty faint, but you can see it pretty well, just to get an idea of how much the putty is actually changing. In this particular test, it was not as much as I expected, but again, once we add more putty and we keep trying some new things, we'll get a better idea. But this is kind of what we came up with at the end. Like I said before, photographing the black there putty was difficult, but in person, you can see better impressions. We'll work on getting better photos of those results, but that's also why I included an additional view when I could. The Raptor Reloaded hands would grip with the bottom of the proximal pieces of the fingers, where the Phoenix hands actually gripped with the actual fingertips or the pads of the fingers. Again, when you look through, you'll be able to see this a lot better on the photos than me just kind of flipping through randomly. The Raptor Reloaded fingers really don't grip evenly despite the correct wiring, and the fourth finger is pretty weak. But again, that's consistent with regular hands that we have. And the adaptive grip in the Phoenix hands can be clearly seen in the impressions. So it was a good test. It gave us a good idea of just basic grip pattern. It didn't give us much of an idea of change in surface area and strength, but once we add more therapy, I think we'll have a better idea of what can actually grip better. So when we did some of the blood pressure cuff testing, each of the hands can produce about 2 to 4 millimeters of mercury of grip force regardless of size, and this is something I'll discuss with Akil and Chris in more detail. We're going to see if wear and tear will affect, as well as rewiring the hands to set at about 45 degrees. So this is kind of touching on what we've discussed in the past, but this still is something in the back of our minds. I'm going to get out of screen sharing real quick, and I'll show you how we place the putty. And so I wasn't really able to get too much from the lab today, but what we do is we just kind of place the putty right across these screws. So when you actually put the putty up off of the surface, you could actually see the indent of the screws right here on the top. Just we would place it in right here, and then we'd pull the string so we could get the hand to close, and then it would just close over, grip, and then release, and we just gently pry it off. It was hard to not affect the results because especially the extra soft is very pliable, and so I had to make sure I was pulling it off in a way that my fingerprints wouldn't be in the putty, nor would I be squishing it in places it shouldn't have been squished. So we'll keep you updated with more of our therapy testing, but this is a very insightful kind of a set of testing. So that's kind of what I've got for right now. We'll keep you updated if anything changes. If anyone has any questions, you can definitely go ahead, but that's kind of what I've got this week.
So between trials, did you make sure? I mean, was the putty like the same mass, or like what factors affected how well it was able to grip? Because I would assume that the more thick the putty is, the more harder it would be to grip. Or like, what did you observe?
Yeah, it's kind of a gradient. So this is the size. I think this is a, I'm trying to remember what size. I think this was a 2 ounce. Doesn't say. We ordered this online. You could find this really easily. This is the size we used. So you just open it up. I didn't combine the two.
Okay.
I don't think I did. I think I just started with the one, and then you just roll it out on a really flat surface until you get it to how you want it to be. And that's why I mentioned comparing the Robin hand to like our Wonder Woman hand. It varied so much in size that it's hard. You wouldn't give a child something that an adult could easily grip. They're not going to be able to grip it as well, and that's why we wanted to test the hands using the same amount of putty each time instead of scaling it accordingly. Because I was surprised to find that the Robin hand could actually grip solidly and make impressions on all of the TheraPutties, despite being so much smaller than one of our biggest hands. And of course, our bigger hands easily gripped the putty with no problems. I think what we're going to find is that the smaller hands with bigger amounts of putty are not going to be able to grip as well, whereas we're going to see a better surface area difference or change in surface area with our bigger hands. I don't think strength will vary between the two. I didn't see any serious strength differences just because the putty was all pretty evenly indented. But we're just started out with something pretty small just to see initial testing. Of course, the smallest hands aren't going to be able to grip bigger objects, and of course that's going to affect the results and the strength of those. But so far, everything actually adapted better than I thought it would. I wasn't really sure about our little Robin hand, but it held up pretty well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my question.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was.
Okay, I think that is really interesting to be able to compare two similar sized hands and see the differences. So I'm going to be really interested to see how that goes as we go forward with this. And I think having that data and having actual hard data on that is going to be invaluable for moving forward, both with what's an appropriate design, but also with what we can do and what needs to be improved. So this is really good work.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else for anyone on the call? Garrett does.
Yeah, actually, for Jessica, I just wanted to let you know that if you actually have Fusion right now, and if you make an account and stuff, all the files from my work and Andreas's work, and like pretty much everybody in the Enable community, all those are cloud-based, so you can actually access our files there.
Like in Fusion?
Yeah. So you could just like I take Andreas's like files all the time. I copy them into my folder and just to like look at it and how he does his workflow. And you could do that for my files and his files, and it'd just be like a world of information that you can use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like is there like a taskbar on the side where I can see what you've done to parametricize things? So I can basically.
I think actually yeah, if you register for Fusion and Andreas can actually like just put you into the folder with like everybody else. You'll just have your own folder. You don't have to put anything in it, but you can like.
Right. I think once you download the program, I think you need to send an email to Andreas, and he can grant you access to. He'll give you access to the sandbox, and then you'll be able to access all the things you want.
Yeah.
And if you've got any questions or anything with that, Jessica, just send me an email, and I'll get you connected to whoever you need to be connected to.
Awesome.
Or Garrett too can do it. So either of us.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Well, I think that I know last week we had some problems, and this week I thought we might have problems because I thought I was going to lose power, but instead it was Tricia who lost power. So I'm going to stop this. Thank you very much. Next week we're actually hoping to have a bit of a more formal update on everyone's work, since we will at that point be about halfway through our internship. So we're all looking forward to that. I'm hoping in that case we can get some of the PIs to join us as well. And so we will see everybody next week. And until then, happy printing. Bye-bye, everybody.